Peace, everyone tuning in to the History Heals Talk series. This is Brother Marcus Sankofa-Nix, and I'm delighted to be back for another empowering discourse, another empowering conversation. This is the History Heals Talk series. Learn from the past, heal for the future. And so just to let those know who perhaps are tuning in, checking us out for the first time, or those who are tuning in not for the first time, just a reminder, History Heals Consulting is a business devoted to supporting educational institutions, cultural spaces, community spaces, nonprofits, businesses, enterprises, institutions, so on and so forth, in using history, primarily the lens of African American history, to aid the wellness, the mental health of those that are involved. So that's what really this platform is about. Having therapeutic discourse and having therapeutic conversations to discuss the challenges, the problems, the things that we face on a day-to-day, but also speak to how we can work through that, how we can manage that, and how we can become better, how we can become whole, how we can heal, and how we can get well. So with that being said, I'm excited because we got a good brother who's coming back to talk to us today. Good brother, Dr. Dahl, Dennis Ausar Winkler, my comrade, my friend, my brother in the struggle, doing a lot of wonderful things in the community. TNAT Holistic Wellness Center. The brother's a professor. The brother's an educator. He's a teacher. And I also want to raise up just the importance and the significance of teachers, as this is Teacher Appreciation Week in May. Also connecting the dots historically. This was the time that Brown versus Board of Education was passed. So we're talking about the 70th year anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And so we talk about Black excellence, Black teachers, and teachers in many different fronts. This is Mother's Day weekend. So also shout out to my mothers, who many would consider would be the first teachers or significant influential teachers. And so today we're going to be talking about the teachers, and the teachers referred to as elders. We're going to talk about the elders, and we're going to talk about oral history and intergenerational healing. For those that want to stay connected to check out these shows, you could just hop on IG, Marcus Sankofa-Nix, or at History Heals, Facebook, Marcus Sankofa-Nix at History Heals, LinkedIn, Marcus Sankofa-Nix, History Heals, YouTube, and then also my dear brother, Dr. Dahl, is doing some magnificent things on the ground, and also some magnificent things in person as well too. So I know before we are out for the day, he also can be able to share his contact information and all the things that are happening, so you can stay connected with not just me, but with him as well too. But I'm always excited whenever our efforts merge. And brother Dr. Dahl told me a few weeks ago that there were those who saw the first episode that we did together and said, hey, y'all brothers got to keep it up. Y'all brothers got to keep it going. Y'all brothers got to continue working together. And that's exactly what I strive to do. That's exactly what I endeavor to do, because this brother here is one of my teachers, and I've learned a lot from this brother. He's also an elder of mine, but yet it's been on my heart, mind, and spirit to just really have a conversation on the importance of elders. The importance of elders. There's a passage out of this book here called the Hosea, and this book here is a book that Dr. Dahl knows very well. And so there's a book, this book here, Hosea, Sacred Wisdom of Ancient Egypt or Ancient Kemet. There's a lot of jewels that are in this book here, in this piece of literature. And I wanted to frame and set up our conversation reading these words from out of the book Kajemi from page 49. Okay. These words are said on this page here. The modest person is strong, and one who is true in word and just in deed is praised. Houses are open to the humble, and a wide seat is given to one who is gentle in speech and conduct. But sharp knives stand ready for the unrighteous intruder, for there is no entrance except for the righteous. And I'm going to say that one more time so our listeners, those tuning in, can let that set in. So Dr. Dahl could let that resonate. So I could even read it again and have that resonate in my own mind, body, and spirit. Modest person is strong, and one who is true in word and just in deed is praised. Houses are open to the humble, and a wide seat is given to one who is gentle in speech and conduct. But sharp knives stand ready for the unrighteous intruder. There is no entrance except for the righteous. And, I could even give a ashe at the end of that passage there. Or some might say amen, or some might just, do whatever. But the reason why I wanted to read that passage is because I think there's a lot of things we can extract from that. We talk about our elders, those that have gone before us. I think that is important because I think at times, whether we are intentional or not, we can have the propensity to overlook those that are amongst us who have guided our path, those who have really impacted our reality. No, those who have gone before us may not be perfect, or as Dr. Dahl oftentimes says, perfectly imperfect, or perfectly perfect. But nevertheless, there's a lot to surmise and a lot to extract from what it is that has been laid down in front of us. And we speak about even historically, those of African descent who were denied the opportunity to engage with literacy. Anti-literacy laws were actually a real thing. We leaned into these traditions of folklore and storytelling, and we leaned into these traditions of passing down the spoken word. Even those who couldn't read or couldn't write, I would argue, they still had literate skills, because even though they couldn't pick up a tool and be able to write or spell, they were still culturally rooted. They were still culturally grounded. So I think it's also important to expand how we even frame literacy. Harriet Tubman, for example, they say that she couldn't read or write, yet we look at her community and how they still poured into her a sense of self, a sense of pride and confidence, enough where it mustered up enough courage inside her to know who she was, to resist, to know who she was, to push back. And she had an inner somebodyness, as Dr. Martin Luther King talks about, to still propel her not only to liberate herself, but when she got to Pennsylvania, when she crossed the Mason-Dixon line, she looked at herself, y'all, and said, what good is my freedom and my liberation if my brothers and sisters can't be free with me? So once again, it is important, I believe, to really embrace and to give credit where credit is due, and to really uplift our elders and those that have come before us. And this is a very dicey conversation, because some might feel, well, our elders have failed us, or some might feel that our elders are bitter, or our elders have misled us. And so there's a lot to unpack here. But nevertheless, I definitely wanted my brother, Dr. Dahl, to be here on the set with me to talk about this. So Dr. Dahl, when it comes to elders and when it comes to that tradition, I believe is so important, even sacred, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
How have elders been instrumental in your life, and why would you say, perhaps from your perspective, from your experience, would elders be important, or how have they been important to you?
That's a heck of a question. Thank you. I want to give respect to my dear brother Sankofa, Marcus Sankofa Nix. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate it as always. So how have elders been instrumental in my life? One thing for sure and two things for certain is that without elders, I wouldn't be here. That's one.
Mm.
Without my mother and my father, I would not be here. I am not one of those bitter people. Um, I don't take anything. What's the word, y'all? I don't take
For
anything for.
granted?
Yeah, thank you. Granted. Yeah, thank you. I don't take anything for granted. Um, that I have, anything that I've experienced, anything I've actually accomplished. Um, I'm fasting, y'all. So I think the sugar, I'm in a deficit right now. So my I'm trying to think of words like, but yeah, I don't take anything for granted. I don't think I've accomplished anything that I would have accomplished if it had not been for my elders. If it had not
Mm.
been for and I'm talking about my most biological elders being my mother and father, right? I'm saying I can't overlook that. I then can't overlook my teachers. I can't overlook all the teachers that I had the experience of really having black teachers. A lot of people say they haven't had black teachers. So even when people came to me with these books, I think I even talked to you about it before, like they're saying these white teachers have taught our students in inner cities. That wasn't the case in Baltimore, right? That was not my case. So, I mean, every black person in these, I'm saying everybody, even those I may have disagreed with, have taught me a lesson. So, yeah. So I would not be who I am if it had not been for those elders biologically to culturally to socially to all these type of things. Yeah, not sure.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I also want to definitely give a shout out to my parents, uh, Romero Nix, Reverend Dr. Romero Nix, Denise Nix, as well too. My elders, I mentioned you, Dr. Dahl, but all those who have come before me. You mentioned a good point. We even have something to learn from those who we may not agree with. In fact,
Mhm.
I think that a lot of times that's where some significant growth can come from those
Mhm.
who have opposing viewpoints and
Mhm.
those who perhaps see things from different vantage points.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a historian, so I love to grapple with the past and understand how it shows up and how it shapes our reality for
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
When we talk about what's happening, with book bans, African American studies content being denied in certain educational spaces, CRT battles, still looming, and all these types of things.
Mhm.
And the erasure of history continuing to happen. What the research says is that on the contrary, it's led more people to come into museums. It's led more people to even grapple with genealogy and
Mhm.
family history research. People getting them kits, y'all. People watching,
Mhm.
people getting them subscriptions for ancestry.com. They watching Henry Louis Gates. I know Henry Louis Gates for some may be, some could maybe take them or leave them, but there are those who definitely are trying to connect with their roots directly, personally, in their family bloodline and lineages. Um, and so, with that being said, I think it's a great opportunity. Here we are about to embark upon the summer, family
Mhm.
reunions. These could be times where we galvanize to really talk about this family history. And so, when we talk about connecting with our loved ones, our elders as well, it's not always that easy. And one of the
Mhm.
things, and Dr. Dahl, you notice, um, in our community, and I won't even just limit it to our community, but we can just keep it with our community, our folks for the time being. There's a disconnect oftentimes between the elders or the older population and the
Mm-hmm.
younger population.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it could be some resentment.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it could be some bitterness, as I said before, or perhaps it could not even be intentional, but just an oversight, an overlooking of someone. Um, I really want to unpack that for us. Uh, this this tug and pull between young folks and older folks. And I don't want to generalize and say that there aren't still wonderful connections and coming together between the elders and the young folk. But I think about the dynamic of parents and their children
Mm-hmm.
and the trauma that's there. And I know,
Mm.
Dr. Dahl, this shows up in many spaces that you frequent. When I talk about teachers and students, I mean, now you can go to any social media platform and see students slapping teachers and students fighting teachers and teachers fighting students. I mean, you talk about even some older people, perhaps, still living certain aspects of their previous life and perhaps not wanting to share the spotlight or perhaps move to the side and guide. And yet you have young folk. And as the passage said, being modest is strong. So we also know some of our young folk, okay, there might be a little bit of entitlement sometimes. There might be a little bit of arrogance or a lack of trust or I think I know every daggone thing or a lack of even accepting authority.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you, Dr. Daw, I need you to go on your bag. I need you to and I'm trying to set this up, but what I'm trying to get at is what are some of the things that we can do? Because what I just mentioned are all examples of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that we can do to be able to work towards these disconnects? These pent up feelings, the trauma that we have, or just to be able to better connect and to be able to heal some of these things that keep us further divided, especially intergenerationally. What would you say to that, my brother?
Yeah, good question. I think first and foremost, we have to do some examination to realize there's an issue in the first place.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I think we have to really admit to ourselves that there's a problem, that this isn't working. Now, with that out of the way, I think another thing is to really do some research, do some educating of yourself, look at things historically, and realize that things can be done in a more in a way that is healthier. And when you talk about history healing, when I think about history healing, I mean that we can do a little history. We can look at what's going on and how things have been done in other places and other times, and what were the outcomes then compared to now. I think I tend to agree with you with this idea that we have authority problems or eldership problems. And elders is to me, when I look at it, and I like that you said that, it's greater than this idea of elders versus elders per se, old people or people that are older in age. Elders in an African sense can be your older brother and sister.
Mm.
So when I even think about that, I think about my sister, my oldest sister, Latanya Winkler. I think about my sister, Mahisha Winkler. And I think about, if I really had to be honest and really dig deep, these two women, they are my elders, although they might not have many years above me, but in an African traditional sense, they were my elders and they still are my elders, although I might have many accolades and all these type of things. But guess what? My older sister is still my elder. And guess what? My older sister looked out for me, and she has, and my older sisters looked out for me. And they are a major reason why I am who I am today. So I still, even with disagreement at times, they are still my elders, and I have to give them a level of respect. So again, we have to look into history and culture and find out how was things done before, and we glean some light out of that. Sankofa, in its truest sense, Sankofa, go back and look at what our ancestors, and our ancestors ain't got to be our elders even. They don't have to be back in antiquity. It can be what was going on just 5 years ago, 2 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. to see what was working for them and what we can glean from that.
No, I definitely agree with that, my brother. I definitely agree with it. Shout out to Black Box Radio. I think I see Queen of B. Shout out to you and all the fabulous work that's being done on your platform and everybody else tuning in. Feel free to drop some lines and join the conversation. This is a collective conversation. Nevertheless, I appreciate you positing that, Dr. Dahl. And I mean, when I think about, ancestors, our ancestors, and so especially from, say, the African-centered community, the conscious community. I know there's even different opinions about whether that term should be used, what it even means, the Afrocentric community, Pan-African, so on and so forth. I think sometimes we can be so engulfed with our ancestors. Hear me, y'all. Hear me. We can be so engulfed with our ancestors that we at times can perhaps overlook those who have gone before us, who are not our ancestors. So I would say that every group and every individual has their importance, I would say. They have their significance. I think this conversation is a very dicey one. It's a very complicated. It's a very complicated one. I've even had some personal experiences where I've tried to be humble. I've tried to be humble. And the Hosea says a modest person is strong. And I think, and let me just even deal with that. Because see, oftentimes people think being humble is a pushover, or you about that peaceful stuff. Oh, you soft, I could get over on you. But to be able to exemplify self-mastery and discipline, I think that is definitely something important and something of value to strive towards. But I think what also happens, and Dr. Dahl, we was talking about this before, if you are humble, sometimes people get almost, try to impose themselves. Dad, I'm being humble, trying to, go along, get along, but I might need to let people know a little something, let people know, and I think that sometimes goes through people's minds. I think that sometimes people have thresholds, where if somebody's continuing to do something to them, abuse, unfortunately, I hate to say, it's a real thing in our community. Not just in our community, let me be clear, but once again, I'm just staying home today. I'm staying home today. You talk about the houses of abuse, Dr. Dahl. And so some are like, I'm trying to give disrespect to those that are old. I'm trying to give respect to my brother, but they done some stuff to me, man. I'm trying to give respect and credit where credit is due. It's not easy. It's hard. In fact, I've been hurt so much I can't even put myself through that possibility again. So expound even more, if you will, on this divide that we see at times, and what are some things we can do to break these cycles. I know we're in this cancel culture now, and I know that even with some of my students, we had some debates and conversations on the means of communication, social media, technology. Now you got AI into the mix, and how does this stuff really affect us from being able to connect authentically and genuinely? But Dr. Dahl, how can we connect? How can we continue to try to close the gap, so to speak? What are some of the things that we can do from your perspective, my brother?
Okay. That's a heck of a setup. I'm trying to set up of a question there, boy. Look, you got so much you said. I want to talk to all of that, and then you give me the answer on the end. But
well, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, Dr. Dahl.
Hey, you said look, you said all the spicy stuff. You gonna give me the answer how to heal people. I don't want to talk about healing people. I want to talk about some of the juice too. You know what I'm saying? Just give us a solution after that, right? But no, nonetheless, again, I mean, hey. So I think Man. We again going back to uh, after we realize that there's an issue in our community, there's an issue with communication, there's an issue with us connecting. I think you said something really pivotal that we have to consider in our community, that a lot of us have been hurt by people who um that some of us can consider elders. um for me, again, history can aid in that healing. And what I mean by that is many of us hold grudges when it comes to our parents, our grandparents, our our families in general. Um, and so we find ourselves disconnected. And lots of times what happens is a lot of traumas did happen. And some people have grown and evolved in the process. I'm talking about even our parents, they weren't perfect. But I think the society sets us up to look at our parents as the problem.
Hmm. What do you
But
mean, my brother?
what it doesn't do such a great job in is showing how the society set our parents up in a way that they could not be the parents that it also painted that they ought to be.
Hmm.
Now, I'm
Okay.
not sure. Are you following me with that?
I'm
This is.
following.
Go ahead.
No, for sure, for sure. I want you to even continue to
So,
expound and build
the
upon that. Yep.
society creates the problem. It creates poverty. It creates even quote unquote different middle class poverty, working class poverty. It creates upper middle class poverty. It creates these conditions that there's not a lot of time to do the things that it also tells you that good parents do. Good parents
Mm.
do this. Good parents do that. And so now the child is looking at what the parent isn't doing due to society standards, but the very society set up the conditions that make what it's saying parents ought to do impossible.
Mm.
So I'm getting I want to read this comment so bad, but I'm also wanting to
He,
move.
well, here you go, my brother. Some of these behaviors are learned behaviors as we live in society that puts our elders away. Lack of respect and reverence, and that's Black Box Queen of B. That's what she said right there, my brother. Want me to read it again? You got that?
Oh man, I'll read it. Some of these behaviors are learned behaviors as we live in society that puts our elders away. And well, I guess what she means by we put them in nursing homes and all these type of things, lack of respect and reverence. So there's a major issue with all of that. So again, just going back to your question, though, I want to stay focused. So some things we can do historically is learn about what took place. Now, there's a lot of people out here right now, dear a fellow scholar of mine, who's saying that we've actually looked at the problem enough. And I think maybe a few of us have looked at the problem enough. But when we're talking about healing, and I'm specifically speaking about healing through history, if we read books like Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, if we read just history, we'll realize that our elders and our ancestors collectively never gave up on us. See, it will reframe that faulty thinking. You understand? It would reframe that thinking and say, our elders, our people. If you really know history, you would know that our people never folded. You would know that our people always fought, even when the odds were against them. And we would even know that our people are still fighting today. But the
Absolutely.
reality is, we feel like we're in positions where we lost. So hence the mind concludes that someone gave up on me. And I'm talking about on a collective level. Someone gave up on me. People do this on individual levels. Why am I poor? That means this is something my parents did. Why don't I have access to these things? This means that's something my parents did on an individual level. Why is my dad not home? Why haven't I met my this? Why is my mother doing these things like taking drugs or what have you, or my father? Why are they doing this? Again, because again, that we've never been taught to look at the society as as a problem, setting us up to fail and to be consumed in doing other things to try to cope with the society and its ills through various means, even if that's working too much or drinking too much or doing whatever or being a little heavy-handed or whatever it is. We so what I'm really saying is if we get a truer picture of history, we'll have a greater ability to forgive, we'll have more empathy, and in empathy we can heal. Empathy does not is not void of setting boundaries or holding people accountable, which we also have to learn to do, because in our feeling that there's a deficit or a lack of attention, many times we don't set boundaries because
Yep.
we want the attention that we feel we never got, and sometimes the attention is fake attention because again the society through different mediums, including social media, including the news, including commercials, has set us up with these ideologies, these ideas, these fictions, or these collective illusions or delusions that we are striving for that we'll never reach, and we probably is not healthy or in the first place. But we feel like we have deficits and we feel that we lack because of it, and we have to rewire what truly is real. And because we don't know what's truly real, many times we often find ourselves disappointed, depressed, and feel um I'll just stop it right there, Brother Sinclair. Like you got something.
No, I definitely appreciate that. And uh in this talk series, in this platform, there might be some solutions to some stuff at the end, in the front, or intertwined and interwoven in the middle. And you said a lot of good stuff, a lot of powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think about when I sat and talked to my own family members, um, and I tried to do a little bit of my own family genealogy homework, and I talked to them. I have my mother's side primarily from North Carolina and different places throughout the South. My father's side is from Chicago. Um, the migration and stuff like that had many black folks, moving up, especially at, emancipation and other times and things like that. But when I talked to my mother's side and when I actually did oral history interviews with them, what was really interesting was that they didn't just start and stop and begin and end with oppression. They did not just talk about, the system that was against them. And yes, for sure, there were inequities. Voting rights is an inequity. Um, uh, being denied opportunity for employment is an inequity. Denied where you can live is an inequity. Um, uh, Social deference, not being able to look white people in the face, it's an inequity and a trauma, or being enslaved. So we're not denying that. But what they had to tell me was much more rich, because it also talked about the traditions that was in the family, my family. They talked about educational legacy and the colleges they went to, and it talked about uh church and family reunions and revivals, and they talked about what they were doing when they grew up, and the spirit of community that was there, and everybody supported each other, and sitting on the porch and sitting on the stoop and watching people drive by and waving, and that sense of solidarity there in the neighborhood. And the reason why I found that to be so profound is because the story that, or the narratives that much of the society, and especially the education system, and I'm not just speaking from what I think, I'm speaking to what I know from being in the education system for so long. Oftentimes, it would have us accept a deficit based perspective of history, grand history onto personal history. But what I would argue is it's much more rich. And whenever we can have our history be more nuanced, I would say it opens up room for the empathy. I would argue it opens up room for us to have more compassion. I even wrote down, as you were speaking earlier, Dr. Dahl, even gratitude. History can be something that could enable us to have all of these things, even forgiveness. So I think it's definitely important to balance out those perspectives. And when I talk to my family, for example, this is an example, I was just so empowered because they just didn't talk about gloom and doom and being oppressed. That was a part of it, but that was not the totality of it. And I think we have to definitely have a more expansive scope. You
Can I say
mentioned
something?
also, oh, go ahead, Dr. Dahl.
And I find that we tend to either be on one side or the other.
Yes.
And so I find it's clean. Okay, so I think there's strength in strength-based approaches, but I also think that there's weakness if we don't really understand truly what strength-based approaches are, right? So
Hmm.
so some of us tend to, like for example, the example that you're giving, like there wasn't only oppression and so on and so forth, right? So there's strength in oppression, right? So the fact that we're still existing and went through those oppressive things is a strength, right? So what did you utilize inside of that to allow you to live? And I think that, see, what many of us do is I'm saying, for our community don't really tell the next community the trouble they went through. So there's a disconnect because people do not feel connected to their very mothers and their very fathers. And they don't understand why that disconnect is there. Why is this hard shell there? Or what? It's like many people, if you talk to them, they're like, I know something happened to my mother. I just don't know what happened to her, because they just had to be strong. And this was in them. They've been conditioned that they'll tell you all the good stuff. I'm just going to be honest. And some of what I am suggesting, I'm arguing, I maintain that we have to talk about that ugly stuff too. And
Absolutely.
I'm saying that ugly stuff don't mean it's ugly. That ugly stuff tells you why your mother's so strong, why your father is so maybe might be a little bit more cut off from you. But that's because that's a strength that he or she had to create to get through the conditions that they've been through. So now we begin to empathize. Lots of times we talk about the cookouts and the family reunions. We all really pretty much know that stuff, but we don't know what happened to Big Mama and why Big Mama don't want to go outside after 3 o'clock, or why she afraid to go to the store, or why she don't really give me hugs, or these type of things we do not know, which leaves the next generation feeling disconnected, unloved, uncared for. And now with all this social media mental health gurus, they now diagnose themselves as being deficient, because this is how a healthy family is supposed to look. And Black people are very contextualized people versus white people are more what's the word I'm looking for? Pardon the mind slips. They are more they're verbal. They're more verbal, so they're more into articulating I love you. So that's just one example, right? So they're high, they're high context. That's what I'm looking for. They're high contextual people. As far as Black people, they're hold on, I'm sorry, high contextual people, whereas Eurocentric cultures are more low context and more verbal. So lots of times you might just, like, for example, my mother ain't the one running around talking about I love you all the time. She just ain't. She's just not. But I don't have any doubt in my mind that she does, right? But because this society tells us that you have to do a thing away, it's also causing some of the issue in the deficit mindset. But why is my mother had a different upbringing than maybe some white folks? You understand? She was in a big family of 20 children. So that history will tell you why she's built the way that she's built, why she responds, why she's so funny. Because when you got big families, a lot of times you got to be swift. And why you so witty? All those, you got to be quick on your feet. But what I'm saying is, I do agree that we have to look at the strengths, but the strengths itself are in quote unquote what people identify as the deficits.
I agree. I agree. Um, that's I think that's so important. And I think Dr. Dahl, I think that there's a lot of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the thing is, you know, I want to slow this conversation down, even if it takes us to have to even do a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
And let's not wait.
because because um thank you for sharing that, brother Ja. Um, I think that there is shame because, see, you know, I think that we could take this conversation and talk about and talk to our elders and
Mm-hmm.
talk to our young folk. But what I'm getting at is it's hard for some of us to tell our story. I got a book here called "My Folks Don't Want Me to Talk About Slavery,"
Ah.
and I think that I've even in the field have tried to empower and try to encourage some of our elders to tell their story so they don't feel like,
Mm-hmm.
well, first of all, some of the situations that our people have been through have been traumatic. So to tell it could perhaps be re-traumatizing. So I think sometimes we may not tell our story. You mentioned the ugly part, which is not really the ugly part, the beautiful struggle amidst the adversity and hostility. Um, Reliving that could be a trauma response, a form of avoidance. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that we don't need to have shame because I think, like you said, and you mentioned your mother as an example, there is strength in things that we have been able to cultivate and develop amidst depression. When we talk about inventions and talk about different forms of speaking and where we used our rhythm and types of dances and all the things, beautiful things come from struggle. But I
Mm-hmm.
would also say that even for our elders,
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid to tell your story because sometimes we're afraid to, and I think that's also an act of being vulnerable too. I think sometimes when we tell our story, what are they gonna do with what we say? I know
Mm-hmm.
some people who don't want to talk about some of the things that they went through because they want to protect the children. They want to protect the younger people because if I tell them, then oh dang, this is going to actually be they're going to internalize it and think that they less than. I don't want to tell them what I've been. This is my experience, and I want them to feel like they can have their own experience. I don't want them to feel like they,
Mm-hmm.
So this thing is not so simple. I've been in rooms where I've given lectures, and I've had a range of young folks in their teens and young adult years with
Mm-hmm.
people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I've opened the floor up
Mm-hmm.
and those who were up in age, I wanted them to give them some of that good, rich history of perhaps how they marched down certain streets when certain uh, place of employment wouldn't hire them, or how they had to pick cotton and put them in those sacks and weigh them on
Mm-hmm.
the truck so that way they could reach their quota for the day, or sitting on the porch and seeing a Klan pickup truck with a cross in the back go by, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to tell those stories because they felt like, oh, well, that was then, this is now. They ain't gonna want to hear that. They ain't
Mm-hmm.
gonna want to hear that. I'm irrelevant. I'm old. I'm a dinosaur. They want to go to TikTok. They want to go to Instagram. They wanna, that's where they're at. So what I would say is we gotta continue to tell our story. Now, I will say we also may have to be cognizant of perhaps where we tell our story, or who we tell our story to. But I think it's definitely important to be able to tell our story. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that at times, even when we might not think about it like this, we may contribute to this erasure by not continuing to tell our story. And that's why I've
Mm-hmm.
gotten into preservation so much as of late, because
Mm-hmm.
through museums and historic spaces and even the TNET Holistic Wellness Center, make no mistakes about it, it is a monument. It is a living history testament. It is an institutional archive. And we have to preserve our institutions because our institutions also preserve our stories and our legacy. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's very important. Dr. Dahl, talk to me. What's on your mind, my brother? What you thinking about?
Yeah. I think you said a lot of beautiful things. And and you're saying it's important to take this trauma informed approach when we consider our elders, and maybe it may re-traumatize or trigger something up in them to bring up some emotional dysregulation. um I think what I wanted to say to that, and I think you kind of said it, but the fact that I feel locked out, that I feel stuck, is already a symptom of trauma. It's
Hmm.
not just a symptom of trauma, is a symptom, is indicative of the traumatization, right? So
Hmm.
how do we now create a space that these stories are told? These collective stories that we're talking about, as far as what our people have been through um collectively being here, but also the stories, the mythologies, that the legends that we may not, they may be actually true, but we don't know what happened to mama. We don't know what happened to papa. We just know that he or she keeps things very tight. We know that mom and pop don't talk about their life as children. We know that mom and pop are very they don't move or talk a lot about their own upbringing. So I don't
Hmm.
understand. So again, going into this narrative history that you're speaking to, I think that we disservice our children, our progeny, when we don't, when we so stuck that we can't share it. Now the problem is not a problem that you can't, because it's understandable. And even back then, mental health is not a big thing. Emotions weren't necessarily a strength. So but I think it's important for us to have these conversations to understand why emotions were not a strength for mom and pop. Instead of trying to put them in a deficit or make them to pathologize them in the way that they showed up in the world that got us to where we are today, we pretend to pathologize them rather than say, you know what? Look at what mom and dad did. They may have not been perfect, but guess what? As you start off the show saying, I always say they're perfectly imperfect or imperfectly perfect. Because I don't even agree with this idea that we're not perfect. The idea is faulty in and of itself. Like, we're not perfect. What do you mean I'm not perfect? I'm perfectly human. You understand? Humans have aches, and humans have pains, and humans have emotions, and humans yell sometimes. So I'm perfect. The creator has created me in a way that I can scream sometimes, even on this mic. You understand? So so even the language. So stops. So again, I know that you're asking me these questions about what are some skills. To me, the greatest skill we can do is rewire how we look at our condition, whether that be collectively or that be individually or familiarly, just within our nuclear family or extended family or community. Because the way that we look at things is also aiding and abating in our traumatization. So again, trauma, you're likely to have trauma, and this is what psychosocial emotional trauma comes from, the way that you view things. It's not the event. Psychosocial emotional trauma is how you perceive the event, and whether you felt like you had power or agency to overcome it. When you feel stuck, you're more likely to be traumatized. But if you also are a person who experienced traumas early on in your life due to some attachment stuff, which I say this society often creates, especially in our communities and our households and all those type of things, you're more likely to be traumatized by certain events, because the meaning that you derive from events is what ultimately leads to one being traumatized. So again, one of the strengths that we have in our community is our spiritual spirituality, our faith traditions, our communal or collective togetherness. As much as people say that we're not together, I think we can reframe that and show many instances of collective work responsibility and all these type of things. People may not do things the way that you think things need to be done with all your fancy books and education and all these different things we got going on, but nah, we are doing the best with what we have. And many times we think we're too smart and we're smarter than the people who don't have, quote unquote, the education. I'm not even saying formal education, because like, as you said, in these conscious community streets, we think that because we picked up Amos Wilson, rest in power, great doctor, Amos Wilson, and many others, that now somehow we are better than the people who came before us, that we're more intelligent. We literally look down and frown upon. I was working with a sister one time, and she was dealing with this guy. I forgot his name is the Black something. I'm not even gonna put his name out there on your podcast. It's, keep it real neat for Brother Nicks. You understand? But the brother has a podcast where he talks about our previous generations failing us because they didn't set us up with I guess with insurance and all these different things and all this type of things, and we should have a legacy. They should leave us with a legacy, and they need to start spending their money. Talk all this negative about the Black community. They ain't doing this and they ain't doing that. They're spending their money this way. So now, literally, what he is doing is creating a narrative that puts our people in a trance that now creates trauma in them, and now they're looking back at their dead ancestors and even elders as less than stupid, feeble-minded, and as if they wasted their time, and you don't even know their story. You don't know their story. You don't know what they've been through, what they went through to be the people that they are today. So again, I have uncles, I have alcoholism and all types of things in my family. But again, they may not be quote unquote perfect in the Eurocentric sense, but I know that my family loved me. I know that my uncle loved me, even if he cussed at me. I don't even think he cussed at me, but nonetheless. But what I'm saying is this: we have to rewire the way that we look at our communities. We have to rewire the way we look at our uncles, because a lot of us go out and get these fancy degrees and these fancy conscious information, and we come back and we definitely frown upon our people. So we too have to really rewire the way we look at things. I mean, I talk to elders, mamas, and babas today where they say their children literally tell them that I'm the look, I am. It's my house. You in my house. I don't ever care. If my mother was in my house, you would never hear it out my mouth that you're in my house. Why would I do that to my mother? What type of respect is that? What I'm saying is, this is when we're so caught up in Eurocentric ideas that we don't know how to respect our elders. My mother is always going to be my mother, and she has wisdom that I have not even reached. I don't care what kind of letters I got before my name or what kind of letters I got behind my name. She has lived on this earth longer than me, and I have lessons to learn that she's already been through.
Absolutely, my brother. I agree. Brother Kelly Vision Production. Thank you very much, my brother.
Oh, I'm jealous. Hold on. What? Huh? Well, hold up. How he getting for that? Look, hold up. Super chat in the house. But go ahead. Go my message. Hey, hold up. Did that super chat come on my side or his side? So, go ahead, brother. Hey, peace,
man. I'm gonna say this. Brother John, we had to push this conversation longer for a few minutes if possible. But no, I think that we tend to forget. We tend to get a sense of amnesia in terms of, like you said, we get to a certain place and we forget those who helped us along the way, and it can be short term. We ain't even got to go back to slavery. We ain't even got to go back to the 1800s and 1900s. Look, we'll come into these conscious circles, and then we'll beat up the people in the church. Oh, they conditioned. Oh, they they bowing down to Eurocentric, da 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 da. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of different perspectives and ways we can look at a thing. And so I'm not here to say that certain religions or the church even may not have its critiques. Let me just say that. But I think what we also tend to do is, once again, exclude those aspects that we can draw on that can be empowering, that has helped us be who we are. We talk about how it's a deep-rooted tradition of how we've always came together and galvanized. We've connected. That spirit of community and collectivism has always been through and through. And I would have to say, even the church, I look at my own past, I look at my own lineage, and I look at how that has helped to shape those before me and myself, and how I can't deny or ignore that has played some role. It's played some part. But what happens is we throw the baby out with the bathwater and try and eliminate everything completely. And I would even argue that is very extreme. That is very black and white thinking. And so I think that is something else for us to caution. I think you also have, when you say, I think we're in oftentimes a state where we want to hurry to accomplish things. We want to reach the goal. We want to reach, what we and achieve what we set out to accomplish, but we at times don't really take into account with the level of importance like we need to the process and the importance of being under a jegna or apprenticeships and learning, taking our time to learn. I've even been in spaces with brothers or groups where, we want to just disregard what those have been through and the pieces they've given us. We want to just do our own thing, our own self. And I would just say, let's really slow down long enough to really understand what has come. It might even save us some work. It might even save us some hassle. It might even save us some stuff. But I think you have said this many times, Dr. Dahl, sometimes we can't see the big picture. We can't see the whole thing. So I definitely agree. Our lens and how we see things, how we view things, that is so critical and that is very important. And I think that our lens, if our lens of prior events and of previous encounters is distorted, then our present lens will also be distorted as well. So I think, once again, shout out to brother Kevin, to brother Kevin Patrick, Common Humanity, who always says, let's use the past as a place of reference, not residence. And I think that there's a lot to be said in that my dear brother says, because we can reference the past to propel us to the future. But in a society that always is so fixated on futuristic endeavors and it shuns the past, I would argue, let's go back in order to move forward. So with that being said, before we have to conclude things, even though I don't want to conclude things quite yet, just want to make sure, Dr. Dahl, you give out your information so people can reach out to you. You also have platforms and you're doing collaborations with some wonderful people. I know Dr. Jared Ball is going to be in the house tomorrow talking to people and tell them what they need to know to stay connected with you and what's being done, my brother.
Yeah. So before can I just say something before I even go there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I just wanted to build off of what you just said. And at the same time, this work is difficult. And when I mean this work, I mean this healing work. And many times I think we have to even reframe the way we look at ourselves in these places where we are. For example, like those of us who find ourselves in the conscious circles or what have you. I think it's important for us to understand that, we too are trying our best to deal with these traumas, these societal level traumas, even, right? So it's because what happens is we expect more from the group that, because we believe we've reached the place, and so the people that I'm associated with, we supposed to do better. We supposed, because we supposed to be the conscious folks, or what have you. But the reality is we're all confused, and I think that we're all confused. We're all trying to deal with this reality the best way we can. So it even takes. It's important that we have compassion for those who are in even the conscious circles, although they think they know everything. But that's a predicament of Western culture. So and in fact, the intellect is the most important aspect of one in Western culture. So many times when we're trying to be more African, we don't realize, and I'm saying all of us, including myself, we don't realize how Eurocentric we're still dealing with these Eurocentric frameworks. I'm talking about, even though we think they're African frameworks, like we cannot deny that we've been reared here, wired here, under this society, and even the conditions, and some of these things that we even have are for our very survival. So it puts us in a very interesting state. I think a very interesting place, and we can talk more about trauma and how trauma impacts one, and puts a person in a very unresolved place, or creates conflict, and hence to have an unresolved attachment system is that the very thing or person that you depend on is the very thing that also hurts you, which creates a very unresolved type of person. So yeah, this is what we're dealing with, I say, on a collective level. But you can follow me on YouTube, you can follow me on Instagram, you can follow me on TikTok, dr. Dennis Ausar Winkler. Dr. Dennis Ausar Winkler.
Yes, my brother. I love you dearly, and I really appreciate you being back. We're going to continue to have more conversations and discussions. Shout out to brother Ja Logic, who is behind the scenes, being the technician, bringing forth this wonderful talk conversation, this series. I know he also works with Dr. Daw as well too. HistoryHillsConsulting.com is where you can go to learn more about what's being done in terms of professional development, workshops, lectures, trainings, you name it, keynotes, whatever the groups, whatever the case may be. Marcus Sankofa-Nix. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Trying to get my TikTok up, but I'm not where Dr. Daw is quite yet. But nevertheless, feel free, info@historyhealsconsulting.com. Definitely stay connected and stay tuned. We're going to continue to have more shows like this. I just want to say this as we wrap things up for our session today. When we talk about this work, Dr. Daw said that this is not easy work. Some would say it's not easy, yet it's necessary. Yes, it's important work. But I would say this: African American experiences serve as a pedagogical tool and an educational model indispensable to not only heal the Black community, but also for the health and wellness of everyone in society. And so when we talk about perhaps the lens, in this case, the African American lens, we oftentimes, from a Eurocentric standpoint, whenever something isn't about us, or whenever the lens is not our lens, then we feel, oh, what about me? I'm excluded. I got pain. I got hurt too. And then we can get into the oppression Olympics. But what I would posit, as this quote suggests, is that the lens of African American experiences is not only a healing approach for Black folk only, but I believe that it also can be something that all groups can take healing from, because compassion, that is something that everybody can possess. Empathy, that is something that everybody can possess. Connection, that is something that everybody can possess. Gratitude, forgiveness, these are qualities and traits that everyone can possess. So nevertheless, I want to thank Dr. Y'all, Dennis Ausar Winkler. This is only the beginning, and we're going to continue to have more shows and more conversations of this magnitude. And so definitely stay connected. So we're going to go ahead and sign off at this time. Until next time, peace, love.
Thank you, Brother Sanko, for having me on, brother. Peace, peace, peace.
No problem, my brother.